Welcome everyone to our presentation on life beyond Scotch. Leaving school can be hard. So tonight we are providing you with some tips on how to help your boys in their new lives.
Keep in the front of your son's mind that it is a period of transition, that life is not going to be like this forever, and that it is a difficult time. Socialising with friends, having a job, doing some study, exercising, getting enough sleep, playing sport, all the sorts of things that can help him sort of find his energy and a healthy balance.
What is the right balance? Like, where do we find it between, half your day in your room and half day outside? Like, what's the limit? Is there any sort of strict guideline, or is it, more of an ad hoc scenario?
What I would be looking for is your son's capacity to function, So if he seems to be spending a lot of time in his room, but he is getting to work on time, he is going to university classes if that's what's happening, or catching up with friends on occasion, playing sport, I think then, even if he's spending a bit more time in the virtual world than you would like, if he's functioning, I think that's okay. But if your son is not going to the parties that he's invited to, he's lost his job because he missed too many shifts, not really able to function in the real world, then that's the sort of the red flag, I guess.
Yeah. And Nick, do you sort of have any sort of key tips on how you navigate your way through that day-to-day grind?
Not really that I could think of at the moment. I was going to come back to the one of parents reaching out to the parents of the same sort of cohort, because it is quite a unique time, when your son just finishes high school, and so there is that shared experience, and some people will be sort of having more success than other families, and I think to sort of share what's working, what's not amongst the parent group could be really helpful.
Well, I guess it's a time where our young people get that opportunity to start making decisions for themselves. So they get to decide if they're going to do the work, hand the assignment in, get involved in the group project or whatever it is. So maybe just starting to share, well, as a parent, what works for you in those times? How do you structure your day? What works for you? And start that discussion so they can sort of see some ways forward or some different ways to structure their own days.
Absolutely.
The virtual world has brought with it unprecedented opportunity, but it's also brought some concerns around developing some of these crucial skills that are not just employability skills, but these are skills that young people need for life, because they need to have the ability to share how they're feeling, to communicate with someone, to have a conversation, to be vulnerable, to understand what these emotions mean to them and be self-aware around it. So I think there is a balance, and if we can encourage this, bring back talking around the dinner table and starting to have some of these conversations, it's going to be beneficial for them to a degree.
So sometimes even just, a part-time job can sort of inject enough structure into their life that they can structure some other things around that.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think over the last couple of years, it's probably that structure's been lost in a lot of young people's lives.
Yeah.
So how can you start to build that at home as well? And if it is, getting them involved in doing jobs around the house, or whether it's everyone takes a meal and cooks that one night a week, that gives them some structure to that day, and they can have to go to the supermarket, they have to cook that meal for the family, and getting everyone in the household involved with that will start to build some of that structure that may be required.
Why is it important for my son to get a job and or do an internship?
To build these skills.
Yeah.
We keep going back to the skills that employers want to see. And I can tell you, for young people entering the workforce, 90+% of organisations are looking for the same skills.
And they're not looking for an ATAR.
No, less and less. I can tell you right now, they don't care about your CV or your interscore or your degree type. It's become less and less relevant to them, but these skills are what is at the top of the list.
So, and my hope is that could be quite reassuring for some boys who are disappointed with their ATAR or feel like they've sort of not achieved as well as they would have liked to with their ATAR. But you're telling us that, it's almost beside the point.
I actually probably couldn't tell you what my exact ATAR score was. I know it's a few years ago now, but I couldn't tell you what any of my mates got, what I got. It becomes less and less important. And I think if we can frame that up to our young men and show them that it's not the be all and end all around your career success or what you do with your life after school, then hopefully it puts them in a much better mindset.
How can boarders best connect with each other, or reconnect with their environments back at home, or the boys from school? What's the best way for boarders to engage with other people?
It can be difficult because they're going from a life where there's so much structure and they're living with their mates and 24/7 they're surrounded by people and their friends. So it can be difficult. I think one of the benefits here is the virtual, the social media aspect of it, and staying connected through that, especially when they move maybe back interstate, whether it be farming families or whether it be international students as well. But also, I think it's here about making a real conscious effort now that they're out of that school structure, and making the effort to call, to email, to text, whatever it might be, because it becomes on that individual to drive that relationship. Like any of us as adults, we understand that for a relationship to work, effort's got to be put into it, and it has to be conscious effort. And maybe even starting to talk about reciprocity with them, to say that you can do it. Always think about, well, what can you give to that relationship rather than what you can take from it as well. So making it a conscious effort for them and explaining that to them, that's how the relationship's going to blossom. I would encourage you to sit down with your boys and get them to identify 4 or 5 trusted sources that they would be happy talking about, and then exploring them as becoming sounding boards for your son. Someone that they can have conversations with, can be a little bit vulnerable, can discuss big life decisions with, because they might not want to sort of have these conversations with you because they are worried about upsetting you, or they are worried about the confrontation that comes with some of the conversations.
Yeah, and that's very normal too. I mean, as you say, all of us withheld stuff from our parents and were concerned about upsetting them or getting into another argument. And that's not a sign of sort of family dysfunction. That's age appropriate.
And I think if we can get them to identify those trusted sources rather than you as a parent doing it, it's going to feel like they're a little bit more in control of it.
100%, yeah. The thing I wanted to say as well is, especially for boys who were in school last year, if they did have a favourite teacher or their head of house, or I think it's not too late to reach out to that teacher that you enjoyed their lessons, or because these people can be like a mentor as well.
Vulnerability is an absolute superpower, and I'm a big advocate for if we can be vulnerable and show others how we are feeling, it's going to help a lot. One thing I know when we did discuss this last year, Nick, was we talked about side-by-side conversations. And I know for a lot this actually hit home because young men especially prefer to have side-by-side conversations rather than eye to eye. They much rather that when it might be confronting for them, when it might be emotional, when they might need to show some vulnerability, because they feel much safer side by side.
So you mean like side by side, sitting in a car, or doing something together on a walk, at the footy, watching the footy or something. They can be side by side. It's much easier to have those conversations, and I'd encourage you to try and do that with your son, because it sort of creates that psychological safety for them, which is really really important for them to feel comfortable and open up and talk about some of the issues that they might be having.
Trum, do you have any advice on how boys can crystallise their future directions? It's very hard for an 18-year-old to see what they want to be doing over the next 50 years, but how can they start to get some ideas?
Well, I think firstly, a career is a very long time. I think that was some of the advice early in my career, that you've got to find something that you're really passionate and motivated by, and if you're not enjoying it, then it's okay to stop and start again, especially when you're sort of early. I think, Teddy, you can probably talk to changing university choices and moving around that. So it's a matter of explaining to our young people that mistakes are okay, that these are, if we go back to our growth mindset, that mistakes are going to happen, but it's what you learn from it and what we can take away from that to move forward. But I would encourage young people to get as much varied experience as possible. Sink their teeth into things that they don't know about, because young people don't know what they don't know. So until they give it a go, until they try out something, they might find that they really love it, or they might find that it actually isn't for them. So give them that opportunity to go and work in a bar or a pub, or go and work in the accounting firm, or whatever that is, until they can really understand, well, what are they motivated by? What do they want to get out of a career? What do they want out of their study? To really sort of cement their thinking, because as soon as they're out into the real world, it's up to them to drive that. And I think, yeah, it's important for them to get a varied experience.
All through year 12, it's such a chaotic experience, obviously. You know, your VCE studies, your social life, sporting life, it's a very busy time. I never took a moment to think about what I'm doing the year after. All my focus was on, SACs and exams and everything else that occupies your life. I had no vision of what I was going to do next. So I went to university and I just started doing something because, I don't know, I should. That's what people do. And I had absolutely no real direction. So I was doing uni and I hated it. I absolutely hated what I was doing. I was disengaged from uni, and that probably affected my mental health a little bit. And I was feeling, a little bit despondent about what my future was going to look like. But after some time, I decided to sit down with some, I suppose, mentors or people that I sort of looked up to and could trust in my life. And we had a discussion, as you've just mentioned, about finding your passions. And we sat down and I wrote out what I'm passionate about, and then we found alignment with what I wanted to do. And now that I've switched into a different course, I'm so much happier, and I'm really thriving in that course. And that sort of set a better way to pursue my passions and find some real purpose in what I want to do in my life. So from my own personal experience, it's not a bad thing for kids to change around and try it out. That's really what university is. Hence courses often being so broad. What if a boy decides to defer their studies? Is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Where are we at?
I think it's a good thing. I deferred my studies straight out of school. And I think if you can take lessons from it and start to articulate your experiences and what you've gained from that, and whether it be part-time work, whether it be volunteering, whether it be traveling, there is lessons to take. And if you can articulate those to the skills that you built experiencing that, then that's going to be beneficial down the track as well.
Absolutely.
So what do we say though? We're not encouraging defer to do nothing.
No.
But defer and do something.
Yeah.
Green light. Yeah.
Yeah.
Careers are different now. It's not so much about a career, like I'm going to be in this career for the rest of my life. Have the knowledge that you will try lots of different jobs or different training courses, and that's okay. That's almost the norm now.
We have nearly 30 clubs and societies across a really broad range of areas. That could be the footy club, the cricket club, over to the music and drama clubs, the food and wine club, there's a bushwalking club, there's basically anything. You poke a stick at it, you'll find something. And then that's not all just located exactly within Melbourne. One of the things we have coming up soon is the Canberra branch event. So, a lot of students often go to ANU, for example, and the bookings for that are now becoming open. And for anyone based in Canberra, there's a great way to connect. We also run events in Sydney and internationally. We have a very broad scope. So this isn't just for people in Melbourne. Like, we like to really open up and engage with people, with Scotch people all across the world. So we try and remain really, really diverse. One of the great benefits as to what Oscar can do is our website called Oscar Connect. And what that provides is a distinct database full of mentors and alumni across multiple year groups, and they're available there for boys to reach out and ask for advice or ask for a coffee, ask to hang out. And that's a really structured way for boys to look for mentors and a way they can connect with the Oscar alumni community. What do you wish your parents had asked you in your first year after school? And I know that for me, with no blame going to my parents in case they somehow see this, I wish there was a greater emphasis put into what I genuinely want to do. That's a question that's often thrown around, particularly to Year 12 students. Been like, oh, what do you want to do in your next year? And often you give some throwaway response, much like the "how are you good" scenario.
Yeah.
And I think it probably would have been important for me to have sat down for a little bit longer and to put a more concerted effort into really answering that question well, because that's the main thing that was missing out of my life in the first 2 years out of school, is I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd never really stopped to think about it. So, again, not to blame my parents, but I think if that was asked, perhaps in, a more considered manner, then perhaps I would have come to that clearer decision about what I'm passionate about a little bit earlier. So, over to you two.
Good luck, Nick. You can go first.
You're taking it.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine is similar. I think I would have liked my parents to ask what they could have done to support me, Like I felt like at that time I did know what I wanted to do, even though it's changed. But I didn't really know how to go about it. And I think that if they had sort of asked me, how can we help or something like that? Yeah, because there is this sort of notion that Year 12's a real grind and then life's easy. But that's not really the experience for school leavers. And sometimes I think my parents fell into that. They believed that as well. They were like, oh, he's 18, he's finished school, how good, I'll just leave him alone.
Yeah. Definitely resonate that with, and I'm sure many people really do. John?
I would say that rather than a question, so to speak, I'd say that they probably took a real interest in what I was doing and day to day and created that environment to probably share and talk about it more. I was living out of home, straight out of school, so they probably didn't see me day to day, so taking that real interest in it. And now what would I do for my next ones? I'd put my kids, they're a long way off finishing school. I haven't even started school yet. But when they get there, I think regular check-ins around maybe talking about, are you fulfilled? Is your cup full? And that takes a lot of self-awareness from your child to acknowledge whether it is or it isn't. And if it isn't, well, how can we help you fill it? How can we fill your days with your passions and what you love doing? Because that's obviously really important.
Absolutely. So almost really all three have come to quite a neat theme there at the end. So that was all the questions we're going to get to tonight. And I'd just like to wrap up a little bit. So firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for your questions and for sitting around and listening. This discussion will hopefully really help you and your boys throughout the next stage of their life. And the effort that you've gone to tonight to help support your boys is a great sign. So thank you and good luck in the next steps with your sons.